Thanks for tuning in, guys. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Lead Farmer Clothing. For those of you who asked where you can get my shirts, leadfarmerclothing.com has them. You can pick up a FullMag shirt or an agricultural operator mashup, all of which are shipping right now. These shirts aren't cheap quality, mass-produced garbage like you see at a lot of places that have that 100% cotton, heavyweight feel with the really thick vinyl lettering and stuff on them. This is all super lightweight, premium quality touch, screen printed, all that good stuff. Most of the time whenever I'm filming out in the desert, I just can't, as much as I like some people's shirts, I just can't wear a lot of them because of the really heavy materials that aren't breathable. And whenever it's 115 degrees out, 120 here recently, it's just, I got to have that breathable lightweight stuff. And so, when you try these shirts out, hit me up. Let me know what you think about them. But they're some of the lightest weight shirts out there. They're extremely breathable. I can't even talk. Speaking of breathable, right now, you guys have been asking about the hats that I wear in videos and stuff like that. So I generally just have them made, like maybe 5 or 10 of them at a time, and then I'll just hang on to them in case something happens in a shoot or something like that. But I decided to go ahead and do a little bit larger run, limited quantity, just to see what you guys think. So right now, when you go to leadfarmerclothing.com, I have 2 different styles of hats that you guys can check out. There's a blended operator hat, which is, the blended means it has panels that are ripstop, and it has some panels that are mesh. So more breathable for the arid desert climates, or if you're in a rainy area or something, you want the full standard operator hat that's just all ripstop panels. You can check that out. Also, the underside of the brim, kind of a cool feature. I like adding little things here and there that are a little different than some hats out there. The underside of the brim has a very light Velcro pile to it, so you can pull your patch off of your hat, stick it up under your brim if you need to. If it's an offensive patch and you're walking in somewhere, you don't want people to see what you're wearing or something like that, you need to go stealth, you can pull it off, put it under there. They're all Velcro, one size fits all, adjustable and everything. These are the hats that I wear in my videos, so feel free to pick one up. There's only a limited quantity of them out there right now, so if you want to grab one, I'm going to put a coupon code up for all you podcast listeners. I don't know how many of you there are, so I'm going to do 10% off. All you have to do is at checkout, just type in the coupon code podcast and you'll save 10% on your order. This episode is also made possible thanks to Black Rifle Coffee. Stop buying overpriced hipster BS coffee, all right? Black Rifle Coffee not only offers a better tasting coffee, but a portion of the proceeds also goes to gun rights advocacy. So my 2 favorite roasts are Silencer Smooth and AK-47 Espresso. For those of you who haven't seen the videos I did with Sky John from Tipsy Bartender, I got a video coming out probably in the next week. Made an AK-47 Espresso Martini. That stuff is awesome. I love it. Also, if you're into the more bold roasts, they have Beyond Black and Murdered Out. And if you don't have any time and you need to get some coffee, you don't have time to make one, you need to reload, Cup of Joe on the go, Black Rifle Coffee now has K-Cups. They come in 12 little bullet-sized or bullet-designed K-Cups that come in an ammo can, 12 to an ammo can. So if you need to get caffeinated and ready to go, check it out. I can't get over the packaging of this stuff. It's really, really cool. It's funny because most of the people I talk to, they absolutely love the coffee. But the draw is they see the website or they see the coffee roast, the names like Caffeinated as Fuck or Better Than a Blowjob, all these other limited runs out there. And they buy it because of that, and it just looks cool. It's a cool gift. And then they actually make the coffee, and they're like blown away by the flavors and the caffeine and everything. So if you guys want to check that out, go to blackriflecoffee.com. It is the official coffee sponsor of the FullMag podcast. Today's guest is my good buddy Colion Noir, and for those of you who might not know him, his YouTube channel is Mr. Colion Noir. He offers a very well-educated and very well-articulated perspective on firearms, reviews, and politics. Now, I've been a little bit reluctant to just record a podcast every single week. So make sure you guys let me know on Twitter if you'd like to see me do these more frequent or only whenever I have a guest on the show. I don't want to oversaturate you guys with content. So without any further delay, I give you Mr. Colion Noir.
So, looks like you kind of have a little podcast thing going on here.
Yeah, a little bit. You know what's funny? The funny thing about this is I spent a lot of time, effort in setting this up, and obviously a little bit of money in it with the TriCaster and everything.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a whole lot of time to podcast. And the idea behind it is I'm kind of getting it to the point where I don't have to worry about. I can just come in here. I can sit down, maybe on a weekly basis, just hit record and just talk.
Gotcha.
If you come into town or somebody comes into town, we can just have a conversation. There's no editing. It's just easy, and then people can kind of, like the stuff that I do. People don't actually really get to see my perspective on a lot of things. They just see something that's kind of exhibitionist, and that's it, and then it's done. We saw that gun. It's over. So this way they can see like, oh, I'm busy. I've got a lot going on in life, that I'm working on and stuff.
I mean, that's usually the deal when you deal with people like us where people only really engage us through the end product.
Yeah.
There's really a lack of appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes. And I'm not asking for that appreciation, but there's a lot that goes on.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, low key, man, but you weren't supposed to call me out about it. It's I mean, I love this setup. I mean, I've always wanted to do a podcast myself. It gets a little weird talking to yourself about guns by yourself.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how you want to set it up. You do it like this, it's very dictated by having somebody in studio.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough to have like friends, comedians, and stuff like that I can just bring in on a weekly basis.
That's what happens when you live in Cali.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. But when it comes to you, I mean, you might be better suited with something on, say, Skype.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, Google Hangouts, whatever it is, you can do that, and you can have that conversation on a weekly basis, monthly, whenever you find time. So
that's the key thing right there, is the whole time thing.
That's a valuable thing.
You get older and you start realizing how much more valuable that is almost than money.
Back in my day, when there was not internet, we had to walk 15 miles to find out what our neighbor's status update was. So
information overload, my friend. Information overload.
It's great. Yeah. Especially for us with ADD.
Oh God. What do you think came first, the chicken or the egg? Because I'm almost assuming that I didn't have ADD, but then once technology kind of took off, because we were kind of in that generation where we grew up a large part of our period of life where we didn't have the technology, and then the latter half of our lives, that's when it kind of like spiraled out of control.
I don't know how old you are, but
you know what? I did just assume that you were the same age as I am.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. For me, I know I had ADD before the technology kind of increase in life, because I can look at my report cards from first grade and stuff like that. And it's so funny, like we'll go home for Christmas or something like that, and my mom will pull memorabilia out or something like that, like old report cards, and like Richard is such an outstanding student, but for some reason he likes to talk to other kids in the classroom while class is going. Across the classroom, stuff like that. It's funny now and everything, but I mean, it definitely was something I've kind of been like ooh, since I was a kid. Yeah. Squirrel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Lasort called me.
I don't say it because my dog will freak out. He hears the S word and he's like, what?
Well, your dog freaks out every time he sees me.
Yeah. It is what it is.
But you being
did want me, so just so everyone knows, who knows where this will be by the time this video goes up, but we were going to the range yesterday, and I found a stray. I was late, and the dog has like tons of ticks and apparently has giardia and a lot of medical issues and everything. But I find this dog, and I take him to the vet and end up being late for our shoot, and I'm trying to think of a name for him if we end up keeping him. And you're like, just call him Noir.
It's a black lab. Like, what is the problem? It's a black lab.
Dude, I will never hear the end of it.
Sure. Does it facilitate my narcissism? Yes, probably. It's still a black lab. And yes, you would get screwed royally.
I could have you saying you should call him Noir before every single time that I post anything about him, and people would still be like, dude, that's messed up.
It's not like you're calling him Negro. It's Noir.
Come here, boy. It's like, why does he keep saying boy like that? It's very off-putting. He's so angry for a loving father.
But I mean, come on. Like, I mean, now granted, is it basic as hell calling a black lab Noir? Yes, it is. Yeah. But I mean, you know,
I'll think about it.
Yeah,
I'll put it in the hat. I'll put it in the hat with other things.
Don't call the dog Noir. You'll never hear the end of it.
But it's cool. It's cool. Like going back to the shoot and everything, though. It's kind of ironic that you would shoot not your first 50 cal, but your first 50 caliber rifle.
Yeah.
In a state that banned it in 2004.
Yeah.
That's kind of ironic. It's kind of cool.
I love the irony because I get off on irony. Like, I really love irony. So that in
You're
itself,
into some weird sexual stuff.
I wouldn't go that far, man.
Let me
tell you how that happens.
This will make the cut or not. Maybe this will make the behind the scenes.
I can see
but I want to hear this irony fetish that you're in.
The producer's looking at me right now, and I know he's like, get back on subject. Get back on subject. And I'm not going to appease him. So what tends to happen, how this happens, is I kind of play up this act like I'm just down for whatever.
Yeah.
And then when it comes out, I'm like, what are you doing? And then it just gets weird after that. And then, you know, I got to go. And then,
I can see your Facebook promotion, like the little snippet, the clip of this be like, irony fetish ?
I really do like irony. I like irony from a humor standpoint.
Yeah, I get it.
When it clicks just right, it's just hilarious to me.
I think more times than not, the irony in the state of California can be more frustrating than.
I've never met a state I love and hate so much at the same time.
Yeah,
it's equally deplorable. I don't understand the cognitive reasoning that comes into play when they come up with some of these laws that they implement.
Yeah.
It totally blows my mind to the point where I'm speechless, and I'm never speechless. And I get here and I look around, I'm like, this place is beautiful. Yeah. You know, it's a great place to live. The weather's awesome, which I'm pretty sure factors into the psychosis that is clearly apparent in a lot of the parts of the states because the weather's so good. So clearly the concept of reality escapes a lot of people because we're used to seeing hell and thunderstorms. So
well, that's definitely subjective too, because you're like, oh, the weather's so great here, and then the environment's going, hey, we need rain.
Yeah, you're right.
We need rain, bro.
I mean, coming in, we were flying in, we were coming in for landing, and I think I spotted like 3 fires. Yeah, from the plane.
Oh yeah, Big Bear. Yeah. Big Bear's got a big fire. We actually went up there here last weekend. They have a big fire going on up there.
Yeah, man, it's weird. It's kind of like it's a beautiful place destroying itself.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's one of those things where it's. I love having these conversations with people and everything because it very much like the. I hate using this because it's so cliche with us talking about firearms and everything, but there is that conversation where it's like there are natural cycles and stuff like that, and certain people are emotionally attached to certain things and don't want to see, say, a wildfire, but sometimes it's necessary, right? Yeah. Because old growth and the decaying matter and stuff like that from multiple seasons of branches and stuff like that falling down, it needs to be burned away so that the new growth, the new saplings and stuff like that can come up, and it helps the ecosystem and stuff like that.
It's kind of like the whole concept of hunting as a form of preservation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing is people have to set aside what their kind of shelter beliefs are and realize that it's part of the cycle of nature. And I mean, LA isn't necessarily part of that cycle to that degree where, hey, we need to burn LA down every 5 years.
Some would argue that you do.
Well, maybe. I mean, especially people who are locked into specific cable service provider contracts and stuff like that. Like, yeah, we would like to have options here, but it is.
Time Warner.
Yeah,
sorry.
Right. It is one of those things, though. It's like, you know, you need certain things to happen, especially like with hunting. It's hard for people to accept the fact that on the far left side, or the organizations that are very about animal rights and stuff like that, well, they're very anti-hunting. It's like, no, it's actually part of the process. The males that aren't breeding anymore, you know, are potential threats to the males in the ecosystem that are breeding and, you know, passing on their genetics and stuff like that. And so it's like those are the ones you need to take out, or problematic animals and stuff like that. So it is all a part of nature, and for a lot of people, it's hard for them to accept that nature isn't fair. It's not this Disney film.
Well, I think in a lot of ways.
Well, then Bambi did die in Disney.
Bambi did die.
Or not Bambi, Bambi's parents.
Sorry.
That's all you saw on that.
Yeah. Wait, did Bambi die or
not Bambi? Bambi's mom.
Bambi's mom died. Yeah.
Was it Bambi's mom? Yeah, one of the.
But I think that was part of it. But the way they showed it, it made it just seem so evil. Now I don't remember the context why Bambi's mother died.
Yeah.
But was it a hunter? How did she die?
I think it was a hunter. It's so weird that we're speculating on such a big iconic cultural piece of cartoon animation.
That's because I think I was forced to watch Bambi. I don't think
I don't really remember it. But if they I don't know if they got him. It's not like it was a buck and they were mounting it or anything. Yeah. But I mean,
I just got back from Yakima, Washington. Yeah, with Christy Titus.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's the big bow hunter.
Yeah,
hunts elk with bows, which completely baffled me initially.
Yeah,
but it was definitely an eye opener. It was something that was outside of my frame of reference up until that point.
Yeah,
you know, and it's interesting how your perception on things really change as you start to engage them.
Yeah,
you know, like your 50-minute spew about trying to get me to jump out of a damn plane.
It wasn't a spew. It was just it was a friend trying to broaden your horizons and get you to realize that you shouldn't be set in your ways all the time.
I'm not setting. It's not that I'm set in my ways. It's just, you remember that whole thing about being black and not doing extra things that are trying to kill you? That's what
okay.
That kind of
okay, so we got to fill everybody in on this, because so you come out to LA, and I'm like, hey, we should go to the drop zone and we'll do a wingsuit formation flyby with you under canopy. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm a black male in America. We're in LA. I got enough things threatening my life right now.
I don't really need to add on to this.
Yeah, I don't need to add on to it. I say they can't catch you in the air.
Until I get down.
That's true. That's true.
And then if I come down too fast, then I'm really screwed.
So you coming out here, did you have to deal with any type of regulations or anything like that? Did you have to get prepped on anything?
I did it on my own.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of the more eye-opening aspects of it. Now I'm doing a lot more traveling than I used to. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I find myself having to re-educate myself on all of the different laws in the different states.
Yeah.
Simply because I don't want to be a headline.
What do you do for that? What do you do for that?
There are a myriad of things. And the thing is, it's like
local PD, DOJ, or
no. It sometimes I don't have the time to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's literally, I'm forced to making a decision of, do I just not bring my gun? Do I just leave it?
Yeah.
And not have to deal with it? But then again, I'm like, I never know what situation I'm going to find myself in and where we go, because me, producers and crew aren't really always used to the environment, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, we're rolling around with a lot of equipment on the move. You can usually tell we're not from there. So it's like, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into a lot of the times.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is, you know, I'll jump online. The NRA has a great source online that gives a breakdown of almost all the states.
Really?
A lot of people don't realize that. You know? And it gives you an idea of what the character is of that particular state in terms of gun ownership, carrying, concealed, all of that stuff.
Really?
Yeah. And then I usually double it up. I'll go back. I have certain apps that I use on my phone. I'll check multiple apps. It's like I just have to reinforce what one thing is telling me.
Absolutely.
Just to justify it, because you can get there. And even doing all of that, like we talked about this also.
Yeah.
As an attorney, I know how laws are written. I can interpret them. I can read them and understand what the language is trying to say. Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that the cop, who isn't an attorney, who comes across me and says you're doing that wrong, means that I'm going to be able to go home that night. Yeah. I may beat the case. I won't beat that right though.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Laws are enforced by those who are dictating the interpretation of
exactly.
it. And it's really depends on the crapshoot of who pulls you over or what their perception of the law is. And then ultimately you could potentially end up having to go to court over something that you were completely justified for, which is really frustrating.
You live here. Speaking of frustration, look, considering what you do, right? You're out here in Cali and you shoot some amazing guns. You shoot crazy guns, right? Mm-hmm. And I've watched you within a couple of days I've been here jump through so many hoops, have to deal with so much garbage that literally in Texas I just wake up and I'm like, hey, I'm like, let's go throw this in the car, throw this in the truck, and go out and do what I have to do. But for you, it's literally like it's a song and dance every time you have to do something.
It's funny. Like I've never really had a whole lot of people see behind the scenes what goes on, and you being here, riding in the truck with me, arriving to the studio and everything, and then seeing how much time I spend on the phone with the Department of Justice it's crazy. Yeah. Like if
I've never talked to the Department of Justice.
Well, man, I should have a red phone to them because the amount of time I kid you not, I've got to the point where I started not communicating with them via phone.
Yeah.
I would do voicemails and emails because that's one way that I can track the amount of time. If I logged all the hours that I spent on the phone with them going back and forth on regs, it would cost me a lot of money.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm trying to talk you into hiring me so I can just charge you obscene amounts for hourly.
Well, I can't afford it, right?
No,
so that's what people are like. People are like, well, just hire an attorney to do. I couldn't afford that.
It's not that easy.
I've spent so much time on this. I mean, my dangerous weapons permit has been the better part of 5 years. And that's extremely frustrating for me because I've jumped through all the hoops, and we're still like they're trying to figure out what more regulations they're going to impose. And like it's funny because you got to hear the conversation this morning where I'm like, no, you're discriminating against me because you've issued the permits on the same criteria to other manufacturers, and I've proven the exact same criteria, met it, and your investigators, your internal process has all approved me, but you're just sitting on my application so that you can come up with more regulations and it just delaying the process, which is extremely frustrating to me. And it's not just California. I mean, there's
sorry, let me interrupt you. But for somebody who's listening to this, they're like, well, why don't you just move?
Yeah, I get that 99.9% of the time. Everybody's like, well, that's why you shouldn't live in California. And in my opinion, that's a defeatist attitude. And if everyone were to have that attitude and a new gun regulation were imposed federally, and we'd
all be in Africa.
Everybody would be like, well, why don't you go to a country that allows that? No, this is my home. This is my fight.
Yeah.
This is my right, and this is my fight. And
I absolutely agree with you. I actually admire it.
The unfortunate thing is it's cost me a significant amount of money. I mean, I've had ambitious projects over the years where I wanted to get youtube.com/guns off of the ground and bring on other hosts and stuff like that, and I haven't been able to do it because I can't get through this 5-year hurdle of the permitting process for this license, so I can T&E off-roster firearms into the state.
Just hearing how long you're waiting for certain things, like for instance, like how long you been waiting for like your suppressors?
Well, technically, I'm a manufacturer.
Sure.
So in Tennessee, I'm a manufacturer of destructive devices. I'm an SOT manufacturer and firearms dealer manufacturer. And I've been that for a long time. But in California, I've been going through the permitting process. So as an out-of-state manufacturer, I can bring my stuff in as a representative for my company.
Gotcha.
And so you take companies like Glock. Barrett doesn't sell to the state anymore of California, but you take Barrett or SIG or somebody like that who has a representative in the state, and they're bringing out-of-state firearms into demo for law enforcement agencies or whoever. They issue them these things called the dangerous weapons permit, which is off-roster firearms with like 15-round magazines or the machine guns,
regular guns that I consider regular guns.
But also things like machine guns or suppressor PDWs and stuff like that. And so you have to have this permit to be able to bring these into the state. Well, so now what they're saying is that I would have to set up an FFL in the state. And I'm like, well, my business is in Tennessee. My business isn't here. Glock is in Georgia. H&K is in Georgia, Virginia, and SIG's here and everything. These manufacturers, their reps have DWPs. If every state implemented this regulation that you're saying that everyone needs an FFL, then you would have to spend $150,000 plus a year in just licenses to be able to operate in every state. And that's not counting the overhead for having a business there, your rent costs, your staff and everything. Your operating costs would be a minimum before utilities $1 million plus if you wanted to be a manufacturer and demo in other places. And my argument is if you have to have an FFL in a state, that's ridiculous because California is a big state. Yeah. So if I demo in San Diego or I demo in Sacramento, does that mean that I have to transport back to that safe every single night? Because that's unrealistic logistically. And if you're saying that I need an FFL in every location that I need to store, that's unrealistic financially. Yeah. And I mean, I can't set up an FFL in every single city in the country. Yeah. So it's really, really frustrating.
Well, what part of that do you think is intentional though? Making it so hard that it is such a nuisance that nobody, like, almost serving as a deterrent in their minds.
It's easy for us to jump to that conclusion because we're on the
receiving end of it.
Yeah, losing side of it. Yeah. But honestly, I don't think that it's architecturally designed that way. I just think that the interpretation of maybe those in the positions to make those decisions aren't very sure about the process because it hasn't necessarily been defined, because it's kind of ridiculous because a lot of people don't realize that the state of California grosses more firearms than any other state in the union. Like we have, and that's grossing. It might not be sales. I mean, because you have cash in hand for Tennessee and Texas and stuff like that.
Either way you slice it, there's a huge gun population in
absolutely,
California.
Absolutely. And we're grossing, tens of millions of dollars a year, but there's maybe a handful of people that are handling this process in the Department of Justice. It's disproportionately set up for the amount of revenue that it's generating. So it's like, why does that money go into a general fund? It's like it needs to go back to the people who are actually, let's go to shooter education programs for maybe lower income areas and educate those communities. So maybe they
see. But then that's where I think you are positively slightly, I don't want to say naive because you're not a naive person, but in terms of the intent, the underlying intent, I believe that is somewhat done purposely. I do. I have to make the argument because there's no way someone's going to tell me that some of these laws, they lack such a fundamental sense of common sense that there's no way somebody's going to tell me that this person didn't see this law and write it and really thought that this made sense from a perspective of protecting someone. I'm not saying it's done to be malicious, but they may have their own agenda in terms of their ideologies regarding firearms.
I mean, it's easy to say they.
But whoever's responsible for putting a number of these laws into place.
Yeah.
But
that's a legislative process.
I understand that, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that there are groups of people, because as big as the gun community is in California, there's a just as big a group of people who are totally against it.
Agreed.
Which would help foster that legislative process in their favor. And so, and I go to one law in particular is the idea that when I have a gun in my car here in Cali, I have to have it in a lockbox. And so what is the motivation behind that other than we want to make it as hard as possible for you to access your gun? Yeah. And I think what it does is like I said, it may not be malicious, but there is a preconceived idea that anybody with a gun is going to do something malicious with it. Yeah. So therefore, we want to make it as hard as possible for you to get to your gun to use it maliciously. Whereas people like you and I, who are responsible people, we look at it from a standpoint of the only reason I'd want to get my gun and use it is to defend myself. And I should be able to swiftly be able to get a hold of the thing that I need to protect myself and do so. Yeah. And so to me, from a 30,000-foot view, it doesn't take a genius or rocket science or somebody who is an expert in firearms to be able to understand what the implications of forcing me to lock my gun in a glove box or lock my gun in a trunk in order for me to not be able to access it, how detrimental that could be to me from a safety standpoint, unless you just inherently don't see guns as a adequate means of protecting yourself. And you don't want to see guns as a means to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to go on too much of a side rant here, but I agree with you, but I disagree on the implementation because I feel like most of the laws are implemented off of the way a lot of our federal regulation can can come about, or the discussion for people say that there's a school shooting or something.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a media knee-jerk reaction that causes certain politicians, like your boxers or your to jump up and say, hey, we need to do this or we need to do that, and that's when this stuff gets implemented. And even in my situation, other people have got those permits. It's how somebody is reading it. I don't feel that. I feel it's more of an ignorance thing where they're like trying to figure out what's going on here, because I don't have the presentation of a Glock or a bear.
It's kind of synonymous to the protests we've been seeing recently.
Yeah.
Right? You have your people who are peacefully protesting, but then you have your inserted agitators.
Yeah.
Which then rile up people who are just kind of in the middle. They're like, they don't like really what's going on, so they're protesting also.
Yeah.
But then you have the agitators that are like, look at what they're doing, and getting the crowd revved up to do destructive things. I think, and I agree with you from the standpoint that, yes, I do believe some of it is just born out of ignorance. People wanting to kind of do the right thing, wanting to react to whatever has happened to force this conversation for them to do something.
Yeah.
But I do believe that within those institutions, there are some people who have their own agenda, and they
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely, that's politics.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like they utilize their influence to influence people who don't know that much. Yeah. And therefore they go off. So if somebody comes to me, I don't know much about firearms, right? But let's say I have a friend who's part of the
I'm glad you're
process.
admitting that now.
Yeah, of course. If you don't know that already, you're an imbecile. But and I'm like, hey, like you've been onto this. Let's say I'm like, hey, Diane Feinstein, you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
Tell me, what do you think I should do in this regard? How do you think I should do this? She has her own agenda. But she does know more than this person here, because she's been trying to force feed her agenda for a while now. But if I don't know much about firearms and I don't understand that, then I'm going to take her advice and say, you know what, I'm going to defer to her on that.
Yeah.
Then I'll implement these rules and these laws that are really actually in contrast to affecting positive outcomes. I may not do it knowingly, but I am doing something that's hurting my constituency.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So that's where I think the ignorance and then the kind of deliberate pushing of an agenda on certain particular people's parts who are, to further my analogy, agitators.
Yeah.
On people who are probably well-intended.
Yeah.
I've met countless people who I've talked to who are, they shriek at the thought of gun ownership, but not because they just hate guns. They just don't understand it. They haven't lived with it. I was that guy.
Ignorance.
Yeah, exactly. And so you being out here in California, you probably entertain more of these people than anyone.
Yeah.
Or at least you come across them and you deal with them. I don't know whether or not you engage them in terms of this discussion on a regular basis, but how do you usually deal with that? Or is that something you don't really do?
Yeah, I do. If you don't mind me jumping back real fast.
Yeah, I just realized I changed topic on you for a second. Yeah, go ahead.
So to your point about the whole glove box analogy, it's so funny because people give hypothetical scenarios all the time, and people hate giving these different situations like, oh, if crackhead's coming through your house. No, that's a legit concern, right? Mm-hmm. But me living here in California at times, or actually dual resident here in other places, but me staying here, I've been, following the laws within the state, and there have been several times where the kind of curtain's been pulled back on the laws, and I'm like, dude, this is fucked up. And did I tell you about the whole Big Bear thing with the
Dorner?
Yeah,
yeah, you did.
Okay, so let me explain to everybody about this. Is for those of you who aren't familiar with like the Chris Dorner thing, Chris Dorner was a LAPD officer, and long story short, ended up having some differences of opinions, blah 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 blah, and there was. Anyways, he ended up killing some police officers, and there was a big manhunt, and it was national news, and everybody's like freaking out. Like these LAPD officers mistakenly shot these Korean ladies in a truck that they thought was him.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, it's like
they tore that truck up.
Law enforcement was on edge. There was this crazy like search going on for him, And I film at Big Bear a lot, and Mojave and a few other places and stuff like that in California. And it just so happened that my camera guy ended up messing up one of the shots, and we had to come off of the mountain and reshoot the following day. So we're like, we're going to get up there super early. We're going to get set up. We're going to knock the stuff off and head out. And so we got up there really early, and then about middle of the day, we saw what was like a drone, a windowless plane fly over us, and we're like, oh, that's probably not good. Yeah. And so I take and I start packing gear up with my camera guys and everything, and we load up. And this is about a good hour drive off of any paved road. It's about I'd say 30 miles on like a 4-wheel drive fire trail, and to get to this private property that we film on. And all of a sudden we see this SUV roll up, and it's sheriff's department. These guys, have their plate carriers on, AKs and everything. It was very surprising to me that they had AKs.
I was like, did he misspeak or
no?
Yeah.
It was because it was. I was like, really, an AK? Like, this is going to be a fairly long distance engagement. Yeah, considering the location you guys are. But whatever. That's neither here nor there.
Sometimes 13 MOA rifles work.
Who's this armchair quarterback over here who's shooting guns on the mountain, and then like they do it for a living to cast an opinion. But anyway, so he's like, you guys got to get off the mountain. I was like, well, okay. First of all, this is like private property, but I get it. I know what's going on. He's like, yeah, there's a potential murder suspect that's going to be coming down this ridge. And so we were in close proximity to the cabin, but the way that the layout of the terrain was, the cabin was up on the mountain. We're halfway down the mountain, but there's this ridge that leads down there from the community and everything. And they were worried that he was going to flee that direction. Gotcha. And so when we had already packed up, I was like, just to inform you guys, I have firearms on my possession. It's like, is it okay, because it's against the law to transport a loaded firearm without the appropriate licenses? Like, in this situation, is it okay for me to transport with a loaded firearm for personal protection in case we run into this guy? And he took a really, really, really long pause. I mean, this is like 20 seconds seemed like an eternity. He's like, you should be all right. And then I'm like, I don't play that game. Yeah. I'm not. I honestly, I was.
You asked honestly for the sake of being nice.
I wasn't asking for permission. I was kind of asking for forgiveness in a way, but before doing it, and my whole thought on it was like, first of all, he's not technically an enforcer of that specific law, and technically I could argue that because we are on federal property and it is technically hunting season, I am a licensed hunter. I could technically say that this is my loaded firearm for that, not personal protection. But so I said, okay, we'll head out. There's only two ways off of them.
I'm going to pause you just for a second, though. Do you see the irony? Here I go with this irony fetish again. You see the irony in what you said?
What's that?
In terms of being able to justify why you had a gun on you for hunting purposes versus personal protection. I know you did. I just want to highlight that so people who don't miss that point, because it's brutally insane that in order for me to justify me protecting myself, I have to do it under the guise that I'm hunting. Yeah. Like versus protecting myself from an already established known killer. Yeah. Coming in my direction.
And this is a very, like, this isn't a hypothetical. This is a very real world scenario, and your adrenaline starts to get pumping and everything like that when you know that this is like an active shooter situation too, and so I'm like, okay, well, there's only two ways off the mountain. Which way should we go? And he's like, you need to go back that way, and there's going to be a roadblock set up for you to get back out onto the road. I was like, okay, we'll head that way. And I just have my camera guys and stuff with me, and none of them are really shooters or educated shooters at that. I wouldn't trust them with a firearm. If we're at the range and I'm RSO and I'm instructing them, I'm watching them, supervising it, that's one thing, but I'm not going to give them a loaded firearm and transport while we're bumping up and down these roads and stuff like that, and them, accidentally flip to safety. So I'm the only person who's proficient enough to handle a firearm, and even that's subjective, right?
Yeah. But I agree with you, and then I slightly disagree.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
here's the thing. I don't want to hit a bump and somebody discharge a firearm.
Yeah, that I get. That part I get.
So that's the RSO of me saying, well, I'll take my chances with the shooter in the woods. But so on that drive, I've never really driven my truck like that. Beat the crap out of it trying to get out of there, and there's some sheer cliffs and stuff to get out, and it was kind of crazy because this whole drive I'm thinking about these laws that are implemented that give me a significant disadvantage in this personal protection situation, and this is the base of my argument for a lot of people, and I try to explain to them, is like, look, your law that you impose on law-abiding citizens says that you have to have a bullet button on your black rifle, you have to have a 10-round magazine, and all of this stuff I'm complying with. All of this stuff this criminal is not complying with, and this is a known murderer, and I'm in a significant disadvantage should we get into a situation where I need to defend myself. And that's the state. The state did this to me. The state didn't put me in this situation, but it's preventing me from being at equal odds.
Yeah,
right?
Being in a position where you can adequately do what needs to be done.
Yeah,
to make it back
and
home
that was like really eye-opening
and
frustrating for me. And we made it back to the road and everything. And my camera guys are very kind of hippie-ish in that sense. We're like, oh, bad stuff can't happen to us and everything. And they're like, just like, oh, this is crazy, all this law enforcement and stuff like that. And so as we get the roadblock, I put my hands on the steering wheel like this, and the guy starts walking over. And I made sure I had my window down before he started walking over, so my hands aren't moving. I mean, these guys that have already shot like these Korean ladies, and like I'm a white guy. I mean, I'm the same gender, so like maybe that means I'm more prone to being shot at or something. And so like my camera guy's like, hey, what should we do? Like moving around and stuff like that. And I'm like, don't fucking move. Like be still.
Yeah.
And like he's like, there's just one guy walking over here. It's like, yeah. You don't know that's the one guy. And so sure enough, he walks over very casually, very polite, very nice guy. And he's like, hey, how's it going, guys? Like, good, officer. I just need to inform you that I have loaded firearms here on my possession, and here in the cab and everything. And he's like, that's great. He's like, so you mind if I have a look around? I was like, no, absolutely. He's like, you wouldn't happen to have anybody in the back here? No, sir. Feel free to look in the trunk and everything. And the whole time I'm like, I got my hands on the wheel and everything, and like he's walking in the back. I'm like, still don't move.
Yeah.
Little did I know that like as soon as he comes back around, he's like, okay, you guys are good to go around the berm there and through the roadblock. And I was like, well, I have loaded firearms on my possession. Is it okay if I unload them and lock them up and store them for transport so it's compliant on the road? Yeah. And he's like, no, we've got too many on-edge police officers right now. He's like, it'd be best if you just got off the mountain and did it in a parking lot somewhere. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's crazy. But we go around the berm, and then they had their riflemen on optics on us, watching us. We didn't even see them. They were like watching our every move. They had the Department of Homeland Security, the Universal Soldier Mobile Command Center, where like the tractor trailer comes out. I mean, this was a big deal. Yeah. And then I look at cases like that with those two criminals who broke out of prison here recently and everything. And it's like people like to have these conversations about hypothetical situations. They like to go back and forth, and both sides like plant their feet in the sand and everything. But it's not really hypothetical. I mean, these are very realistic scenarios, and for it to happen to me, it's like, oh, okay, wow, this is why we fight for the right that we look for.
A lot of these people's arguments too will be like, well, you're preparing for something that's almost never really going to happen. It's those one-offs, and I have to implore people to understand, even if that is true, which I don't believe it is, even if it is true, the consequences are irreversible.
Yeah.
The one time it happens, I get this life one time.
Yeah.
So if something happens, and because I felt like I didn't need to protect myself or have something on me to protect myself because this doesn't happen in this neighborhood or this can't happen here, when it does happen, like when you're in a movie theater watching Batman, or when you're in elementary school teaching kindergarten kids or when you're in church praying, when it does happen, then what?
Yeah.
Like I don't. The consequences for me being prepared and being able to get out of the situation and not being prepared in those situations are way more dire than the consequences of me saying, you know what, I'm just going to prepare.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't happen, guess what? Then I just look like somebody who overprepared.
I think we're both you and I are on the same page, and
yeah.
I don't even want to say like gun laws. I'd say more gun rights. A lot of people when you look to have certain gun rights as a civilian or somebody who's looking for personal protection inside the home or outside the home, it shouldn't be a legal issue for you to say, hey, I'm going to break the law and I'm going to be alive though at the end of the day, versus I'm going to abide by the law and end up dead because I'm that guy who listens to
and now I'm a martyr for a law that should have never been in place.
And that's the thing the situation that you don't want to be in. A lot of people say that might be too drastic of a scenario, but
it's not too drastic of a scenario. We just had a situation happen in New Jersey. You just had a situation. Like the woman was on a waiting period.
Yeah,
she was on a waiting period.
So that's another thing. I could come up with these all day long. But I have a friend in the Bay Area, and that was a perfect point in case where just a lot of people are like, well, why do people need to get going? Well, as a Tennessee resident, you can go purchase a firearm. You drose it the same day if you clear the background check. Well, in California, you have to wait that 10-day period. And again, I'm not just trying to throw hypothetical scenarios. This is a real world situation where this elderly couple lived in this house. And anybody can Google this. They can check it out. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It wasn't an elderly couple. It was an elderly lady and her brother. And what happened was the house was constantly getting broken into, and there were the police reports to back it up. And so the brother, at the time of filing the police report and everything, was, just for the sake of argument, say a Sunday. They filed the police report on a Sunday, and he just so happened to have a shotgun. And the criminals ended up coming back within, I think it was 2 to 3 or 4 days, and broke into the house, like forcible entry, and they found that the brother shot them with reasonable intent or whatever.
It was justified self-defense shooting.
It was a justified. And so had he not been there legally with a firearm, had she been there and her house been broken into the first time, and she said, hey, I need to protect myself in the home. I'm here by myself. My husband passed away or whatever it is. And she went to drose a shotgun. Had that happened the third day, while she was still waiting for her 10-day period, that forcible entry would have happened. And it's like, you never know how these things are going to play out. You don't have 10 days notice before the LA riots happen. You don't have 10 days notice before an earthquake happens, and it's just logistically difficult for resources to get into the area, so people look to feed their kids, and they start, breaking crimes or committing crimes and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where it's like you don't want to say that people are capable of doing this. You like to think that all people are civil and are like good human beings, but it's not the case. Things happen, and it's better to keep people honest, knowing that they live in a society where people can protect themselves.
And the irony is, it's like people who are against that idea of notion of like arming yourself and walking around with a gun, in their minds they don't understand, like, why would you bother, like why are you going through such a pain, like you're carrying a gun. And I'm like, carrying a gun on me is such a passive act to possibly defend myself at a certain point. It's ridiculous. My gun's on me, I don't realize it until I need it. It's a passive thing to do, but because they've been, I don't want to say indoctrinated, but they've developed however they accumulated the idea or perception or how they feel about guns. Because I can remember how I did mine. It was largely due to what I saw in movies, what I saw on TVs, just the kind of conditioning I've gotten accustomed to, the idea that guns are just inherently evil. But when you think about it,
or cool,
you
see the cool factor all the time.
But there's a distance. There's a disconnect, though. It's cool because I'm watching it and observing it. From that standpoint. But to actually engage it, it's like, no, that's not for me. That's just for them. the people in the movies or like the police officers and things like that.
Yeah.
But what it also does is it cultivates an idea that a dependency for my safety onto someone else.
Yeah.
It cultivates that, and it fosters that idea of a lack of personal accountability for my own safety and the people that I love.
Sure.
Thinking the idea, if you think about it, of, oh, well, if something goes wrong, just call the cops. Like, you don't, like, for the ages,
No.
I grew up really thinking, if something goes wrong, as long as I have my phone, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I mean, I had a girlfriend tell me one time, it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm safe, you know. I pay attention to my surroundings, and I make sure I have my phone on me. Like, when I'm walking through a parking garage, I have my phone ready to hit 911. And then I was like, so what happens after you hit 911 and the guy's standing in front of you?
Yeah, that's the core of my argument. That's where I plant my feet in the sand. I sit down at the table with a lot of people and I have these conversations. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I never say that I'm 100% this is my opinion. Well, no, I never say this is how I'm gonna feel.
Yeah.
I say this is my opinion. Please, if you're that passionate about your end of the argument, change my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. I am open to banning all guns. Every gun, just destroy them, ban them. But tell me why we should.
Yeah.
Show me why. And if you can change my opinion on that, then okay, then I will agree with you. But it always boils down to that same situation where it's like, no, this is my house. LAPD response time is X amount. Let's just say, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. 30 minutes. Benefit of the doubt. Because I've called 911 before, and it's taken an hour and a half just to get through. Not for a response, just to get through. And that's because I saw somebody in the middle of like one of these weird median things, and it was an extremely dangerous situation. It's like, hey, you guys need to dispatch somebody out there and make sure this person's safe. And it took me an hour and a half to get through to him. So, and I was hitting the emergency option too, which was crazy. Yeah. So for me, the frustration that comes from that is there is a lot of crime in certain areas in America, and if you do have something that you care about, be it something like an object, be it this gold watch that you have, if it's something that you love, like your dog, your child, your family member, something like that. If something comes through that door or that window breaks in the middle of the night, are you gonna rest all of your faith on that LAPD response time, or are you gonna have the wits about you to go through like maybe like personal protection in the home course or something like that? Purchase a firearm. We can debate all day long about like what type of education and firearms and stuff like that are appropriate for people inside the home. But at the end of the day, the LAPD response time is not going to save or protect your family in the event that something's happening right now. And that's the argument that nobody can really sway me from. And that's why I kind of plant my feet firmly in the sand. I'm like, no, these aren't hypothetical situations. I've not just been in a situation where people were like, hey, well, okay, I can see your point. Maybe having a handgun inside the house is appropriate. No, I wanted a rifle. I wanted a black rifle on the mountain with me that I could have a standard capacity 30-round magazine, not a high capacity 15-round magazine. A standard capacity 30-round magazine in the event that we got into a shootout or something. So people like they want to say, well, that's not the typical. It doesn't matter if I'm on the wrong side of that coin and I end up getting killed in that situation. I might be a small statistic, but I'm still a statistic. And I don't want to die.
And that's another thing too. The idea that we create laws for the very minority few who do bad things for guns. That's literally what we do.
Yeah.
We want to create more laws for the minority, the very small minority of people who do bad things with guns. And then they say it's for the greater good. It's to make us all safe. Well, let me tell you something. I'm not safe when someone's standing in my house wanting to kill me. I'm not safe if I'm walking down the street at night and someone's trying to kill me. At that moment, I don't care about the 90%.
That's so rude.
I know what you're talking about. I thought I turned it off. At that point, I don't care about the 90% because right now I'm that 1% that's about to die.
Yeah.
I don't care. So give me what I need in order to defend that 1% moment that I have. Because otherwise, if you can't do it and you can't put somebody there to do it for me, guess what? I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
And so I don't need you impeding on my ability to do it myself.
And what's crazy is that, again, I go back to this, but a lot of people on the other side of the argument will say, well, you can't just live that must suck living your life in fear like that something bad's going to happen all the time. It did. It happened. This is not a hypothetical thing that I don't live my life in constant fear that somebody's going to be doing this. Honestly, I live my life with the frustrations and the constant fear that I'm going to go to jail because I didn't look at this regulation right.
That is absolutely true. I'm more stressed about having to deal with figuring out the right way I'm supposed to do this because I do consider myself a law-abiding citizen. So even though I'm seriously, I'm literally comparing whether or not I decide to carry a gun that might protect my life or break this law. I have to go through the pain state of figuring that out, reading the law and determining that. And I mean, thank God I have a law degree to a degree where I can kind of understand it. I can't imagine what other people go through who don't understand how to read laws. And now they're having to try to second guess themselves or figure out what is this law saying about whether or not, can I carry it in my car? Can I not carry it in my car? Can I do this? Can I not do that? And then now, for what? At what cost? We've prevented the one person we're not worried about from deciding not to carry that gun. But the guy who woke up that morning and was like, you know what? I'm going to kill a bunch of people today. He didn't get on his phone to check the apps to see what the concealed carry laws in his state were. Yeah. He didn't get online and go on their website to find out what the laws are for guns in his state. You know what he did? He picked up the gun that he bought illegally or stole or acquired legally, but then decided to go nuts, which we can't prevent, and then decide to go out and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And then at that point, the reason why he was able to do that in that immediate moment was because there was no one there, because the guy who was going to bring his gun didn't bring his gun, and now he's there without a gun and couldn't do anything to stop it. Now, granted, I know I just created an entire hypothetical situation out of that.
Yeah.
But it is definitely something that can happen.
So here's the thing, though. As far as everyone else is concerned on their opinions, on the other side of the argument, though, is like they're like, well, if the firearm itself wasn't in the equation, they couldn't have went on this shooting. But the solution.
And if I was a wheel, I'd be a wagon.
But here's the thing: you don't hurt this group because this group has the potential to do this. You figure out a solution to this potential situation, and the problem is the solution is way more difficult than banning guns. It's more difficult than regulations and education. Yeah, I can educate you to be a safer shooter, how to store firearms, but properly or whatever in the event. But that's not going to address the inherent problems that we're starting to develop as a society, and this is very, very difficult pill for a lot of people to swallow, and they're like, it's too broad of a generalization. But to my core, this is what I believe the problem is as society and the information, social media and everything, we're going in a different direction than what our genetics and our existence has always been in the past. We have been very much family or community oriented. I think it's very easy for people to kind of see how people were in groups or packs in the past and how well we worked together and stuff like that. So the solution to the problem isn't necessarily banning guns. I feel like the solution to a lot of problems in society, not just shootings or whatever you want to say, is step one. You have to play an active role in your family. If your kids come home from school, something's wrong, you need to talk to them. You don't need to just have TV dinner time, like sit around the dinner table. I know this is very, very idealist, but I feel it's extremely important for people. You sit, you talk with your kids, you talk with, your nephews, your nieces, you find out what's going on in their lives. Is there a problem? And you develop those relationships where it's easy to have that conversation back and forth to find out what's going on. And if there is an issue, you address it. You go to the school, you talk to the people. If there's an issue on a bigger level where you need to involve other parents, and that's great. You go to step 2, which is involve yourself in your community. Get to know your neighbors. Play an active role in your community. It's play an active role in your family, play an active role in your community, and then play an active role in politics. And you step up every single level like that.
It's too much responsibility.
It's way too much responsibility for the bulk majority of Americans, because they want to live in this isolated, very selfish lifestyle that says, hey, I'm going to work my 9-to-5 job. I'm going to pay the rent on this thing. I'm going to pay the lease on this thing, and all I can worry about is this. I don't have time to worry about this. But in doing so, that little thing that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, in my opinion, is what's costing us our, and some people will call it our core values, but I feel like it's something more than that. We have a psychological necessity to interact with people on these personal levels and stuff like that. Maybe it's me being old school or something like that, but I like having these conversations. I like talking with new people and stuff like that.
The funny thing, where we are right now, that's not, those concepts are now considered progressive.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, because we've kind of deteriorated to a point, and I hate to have this kind of like, oh, woe is us, the world's full of shit, America sucks.
Yeah.
Because that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that idea, that concept of being involved in your family, being involved in your community, having that idea.
Yeah.
It's a progressive concept now.
Yeah.
Where before it was a conservative concept. But what has happened is there's been a vilification of the idea of conservative values.
That's exactly it, because people's perception of that see it as a conservative religious agenda, where it's like, oh, we want you to be a part of our church, or this is our community. They think of community as organizations, be activist groups and stuff like that, but that's not it. It's like you start with the most core fundamental group in your life, which would be your direct. It doesn't necessarily have to be your blood family or genetic family, whatever you want to call it. It could be, if you're in a dorm room or something like that, your friends there. You need to know the people that you're interacting with on a day-to-day, like how they're doing. People need that checking in and out, like, hey, what's going on? How's this doing? And stuff like that. And then the communities, like I know so many people in LA who have lived next to their neighbors for 15, 20 years and never met them. And it completely blew a lot of the people that I know in the area. This is kind of funny. It blew their minds when I'd come next door and introduce myself. Hey, what's going on? My name's Richard. This is I'm from Tennessee. This is what I do. I'm in and out of town and stuff like that. And it was kind of funny is the Department of Justice does these investigations on people like me and stuff like that who have these different types of permits or apply for these permits because what I might bring into the state and stuff like that. So they want to make sure that your mental welfare is good. Don't show any domestic abuse signs or anything like that. And so they'll canvass areas that you would potentially be in and talk to your neighbors and talk to potential colleagues and stuff like that at random. And some of the neighbors and stuff I'd known, but some of them kind of kept to themselves, and it kind of like threw them for a loop whenever they say, hey, do you know that, and then this is a completely different conversation, but they're like, what do you think about Richard? Has he ever shown any signs of aggression? Is he like an angry guy? Have you ever seen him beat his girlfriend or anything like that? Has he ever kicked his dog or anything like that? Are you aware that he is applying for this permit or has this permit to store assault weapons in the state and destructive devices and stuff like that? And a lot of the people's eyes just go, okay, what is this dude doing?
Yeah.
What is this dude doing?
But do you see this? You see the potential for like the slippery slope in that situation?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
It's
because
like,
my
it
thing
sucks because they could literally be like, oh, I don't like that idea. He's a horrible guy.
Yeah. 100%. And if I completely see that. And if it wasn't, this is very egocentric for me to say, but if I wasn't the outgoing kind of nice guy that I am, it might be a little bit more difficult for the average person who might not be as sociable or not want to interact with people in a way that I do. So and they could have the exact same intentions, they just not go about it the same way as me.
They're just naturally introverted or recluse.
Absolutely. So that's not saying that they're a bad person. It's just saying that they're just different. And so that it is a very slippery. And for me, it's extremely dangerous because it raises a signal up in the air that says, hey, this guy has all of this stuff. If you want to break into somebody's house, you're going to have to come armed, but you might be able to find this. And the irony of the situation is I never store anything in California. I'll bring stuff in for demo and stuff like that. But
still put you in a precarious situation because they don't know that.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So we're both on YouTube. We both have our respective audiences. And it comes with a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't realize. I find it interesting how YouTube has kind of become this platform way bigger than I ever anticipated that it'd be. I remember when I first came on YouTube, it was just kind of, I'm going to go watch a video here and there, kind of doing a thing, and then that was done.
Yeah.
now most people don't even watch TV anymore. Like it's YouTube content. Like they consume so much content online now that TV's never going to be obsolete. I don't think. Some people may have their differing opinions, but a lot of it now comes from YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I know me coming up as a YouTuber, it's a weird place to be because nobody really quite knows where to put you or what to make of you.
Yeah.
You know, because there's not really the traditional channel by which people accumulate a following. You know.
Yeah.
And so with doing what you do, I mean, how have your experiences been?
I feel like it's really how the media is consumed, and hopefully this doesn't get too philosophical for me, but it's like me as a consumer. Several years ago, I was like, hey, you know what, TV is just I want it to be on demand. Mm-hmm. Because when I came to LA, I found that 24 dictated my life. It was like the first season of 24, DVRs really weren't a thing. Mm-hmm. And it frustrated me that on Mondays I couldn't do anything else. I had to make sure that I was at home to watch 24. And it was so frustrating to the point where I was like, I'm not going to watch it anymore. I didn't watch the second season because I didn't want to be invested to the point where it ruined my day. I was just going to binge watch it whenever it came out on DVD.
That's what I do.
And so as soon as the whole Netflix thing came around, that model of binge watching entire seasons, like this is where it goes. Yeah. Because I want a program or something that's long enough for me to be invested in the story and the characters that's more than an hour and a half that I would get from a feature film. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think TV will necessarily go away. I think it's more dictated by the behavior in which you're watching the content, right? So so if I sit on the couch, I watch YouTube stuff all the time, but it's like 30 to 40 minute lean back stuff like Vice documentaries and stuff like that. And whenever I'm on my laptop or on my phone, I'll watch the quicker pace stuff like what I do. So that's why it's really important for me to know who or how people are consuming the content that I'm creating and when they're going to be doing it. So I try to make it that really quick kind of here, consume it on the go or however you're going to get it. And then if I were to shift it up or something, do like the TV style stuff, then, you know, it is what it is. But I feel like that's kind of the way into the YouTube world, because there's so many different ways to consume YouTube in general.
It is. And then at least for me, like I came up watching, like a lot of people know me from the political commentary stuff, right? But for me, it started with the gun reviews. Yeah, that was my thing. That's what I liked. You know?
We go so far back.
I'm telling you, man. Back in the day when you had to set up YouTube, you had to like get the AOL connection and you had to dial up and the tone.
Yeah, I remember. Like I can't remember the first time like I reached out to you. And you were this was pre-bar exam for you.
Yeah.
And then like I remember when you were like, yeah, I'm taking the bar, but then I also had this potential opportunity to like host this thing, and I'm like, all right, I'll see you in 2 years.
We're trying to remember. It was just so long ago that we're trying to piece the pieces back together. Yeah, because we always do that. We're like one of those. It's like one of those weird friendships where like we won't talk for months. Yeah, and then we'll link up, and it was like I saw you yesterday. Yeah, and then it's like won't talk for months again. And it's a byproduct of what we do.
Yeah, it's completely understood because we both like know that you get caught up in a production schedule or something like that, and it's easy to like lose touch. It doesn't mean that you're like dodging somebody or anything like that.
But I try to definitely let people communicate that, because I'm such a scatterbrain and I can get so consumed, like you said, in what you're doing that it may seem like you're just trying to put people off, but it's not the case. And because like this avenue is so different, it's not like becoming an actor or a singer where people have done it time and time again. Well, at least for me, I can speak for it's like majority of the stuff I do is on my own. Yeah. You know, I have help here and there with a couple of things, but like my online presence, all managed by me, all of that stuff. Yeah. So at a certain point, stuff is going to drop off the plate. It's just a byproduct of what I do. Sure. If I'm going to stay on my own, and so it's hard to to keep up with the messages you get, then deal with the comments that you get, then deal with the people who are coming to you with opportunities that you don't want to put off, but you know that you can't take on everything. Yeah. But you don't want to miss out on opportunities when they present themselves. Yeah. You know, and then trying to deal with all of those things at the same time. It's like
I'm feeling the weight of it. You just explaining it.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. And I'm not trying to garner sympathy.
No, I get it.
Call me out about it again.
No,
because you're gonna say yes, you are. But I mean, but it's definitely true though. It just is what it is. You know. I sit, even me being doing what I do, we do essentially the same things, but with a different perspective and a different spin. But when I watch the stuff that you have to do, I'm even like, damn, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into what you do for something that seems so simple.
Well, yeah, you only have so much time in the day. And so for you, what's interesting is for you to be able to see how I work and how that reflects and how our time management is and everything like that and the type of content we create. And it's really interesting for me to be able to see somebody who like does really, really well executed things. For example, let's take your Instagram, right? You take your Instagram, you take how you implement that on certain episodes and stuff like that. The execution on that stuff's great, and you can tell that you spend a lot of time on the process of that, be it in pre-planning, execution, comments, taking in content from viewers and stuff like that. Whereas you take somebody like me and you see how much time it takes on one camera shot. Just for one shot, right? Yeah. And so you only have so much time in a day. So the amount of time that you're putting into this, you're gaining in that style of whatever content it is you're creating. For me, my time is only the exact same amount, 24 hours in a day, and so it's focused heavily on this. So I neglect my Instagram, I neglect my Twitter and stuff like that. So it's really fascinating to me to see the different social media personalities and how their time management spent and how they execute the stuff that they do, because ultimately it's a clear result it's a clear byproduct of why they're successful, and you can just see how well that's worked for them and everything. So I don't know, it's been a ride.
And it's interesting too, because like I know with like me, like I get into it with like people who know me personally. They see me and then like, man, you're always in your phone. You're always in your phone. You're always in your phone. Like all you do is Instagram and social media and stuff. I'm like, well, you have to understand, like, I'm not just doing it for the fun of it. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm a personality to a degree, where people want my perspective.
People want to see stuff.
Yeah. And so I need to be able, and with the way things move so much quicker nowadays than they did before. Yeah. You can't drop off the face of the earth for 3 months and then expect to come back and people still give a damn about what you have to say. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. People, with the way we all want immediate gratification, and it needs to be consistent. And so with me, especially when I'm doing, like when I'm filming for Noir, my life goes to shit. It does. Yeah. It goes to shit simply because I'm not only managing having to deal with Noir, I'm still trying to create content for the YouTube stuff and all the things that I'm doing with the NRA commentators. All of those things involve me having to put forth time. And then on top of that, when I'm dealing with a production crew that's working their ass off, I don't.
You don't have to say that because they're in the room.
Huh? I'm only saying it because they're in the room. But there are times where I do have to check myself, because I forget that. I'll be honest with you, I forget that, and because you become so self-absorbed in what you're doing, and then it's like, well, there's a group of people who are working to put this thing together. That's equally important. Nothing I do is like less important than the other. Yeah. And that's, it kind of sucks, but I mean, it's a good problem to have. Yeah. But it's I'm learning as it goes on. I'm learning. We've had our scuffles. We come at it sometimes, but I think that's a beautiful process, the creative process, because everyone around me is really creative. And I love that.
It's funny as you talk about the frustrations. I love those. Dave, my camera guy, is so funny. He is such a cool dude. You got meet him yesterday. Yeah. But he's so funny. It's like you work with these people for so long, and you get to know them very much like family. Mm-hmm. And it's anybody else, I'd be offended by it, but how he explains it is I get so focused on the task in front of me and the shots that need to be done and how we're going to achieve them. And I neglect myself throughout the day, and I try not to be a jerk. Mm. I just I'm direct with like how I speak. Some people might see it as very like off-putting, where I'm like like he's just to the point, and he's kind of emotionless in how he's saying it. It's like, well, I don't have time to be angry. I don't have time to be coddling. This is what needs to be done. Do it, and then I'm moving on. And so that can come across as callous to people certain times, but Dave is so funny. He's such a cool dude, man. He like anybody else who says this, but he probably throw a curve at me. But he's like, here, take a shut the fuck up bar, because I go throughout the day so focused on everything that I don't hydrate or I don't eat, and then that starts taking effect on me as far as like my energy and my ability to think. And he's like, you just need this. Just take a second, drink this or eat this, and we'll get back to it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it, and it's fun. It's that's the part of the process. Whereas like if it was all work and it wasn't enjoyable or anything like that, I wouldn't do it. So
hell no.
And that
it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, and having people around you that are supportive of the stuff that you do, and like having him learn to skydive with me and all this other stuff. It's definitely a friendship. And it's not just with the people that I directly work with, but it's also the community, be it the viewers. And I know it sounds like, oh, it's a circle jerk, but it's true. It's like there's so many viewers that have like interacted with me on social media, and they're like, oh wow, this dude actually talks back, and communicates with me, and then we find out what's going on and like their perspectives on thing, and then other creators too. They find out like, hey, the struggle's the same. You and I very much the same, and when it comes to firearms and stuff like that. But even with certain other creators, it's like, okay, we're dealing with the subscription boxes and all this other stuff and everything. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're first world problems are good problems to have. I'm not running from a leopard that's fucking chasing me while I'm trying to sleep at night or something like that. I'm dealing with
chasing you while you're sleeping.
Yeah, or yeah. Well, that's hey. I'm glad you were paying attention to what I was saying, because I just started running out the mouth there. Maybe I should have a shut the fuck up bar.
But you are right though. I mean, it's definitely. I don't want anybody to hear this and think that, oh, woe is us.
Yeah, no,
like I love this shit. Like I do. I have a very passionate personality, and I want passionate people around me. To some people, they may think I'm crazy. No. I have people like that are just like, do you stop? And I'm like, maybe. It just depends. It's just because it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. When I put my videos together, they're not perfect, but I put my heart and soul into this stuff. Like I will write a script for something, tear it up, just because I don't like the way it communicated. I'll do it over and I'll do it over again until I feel like it's right.
You can tell when somebody phones something in.
Yeah. Oh, hell
yeah. Because as a viewer, you develop a relationship with that creator to the point where it's like you know where the bar is for them being authentic, and when they start phoning stuff in or they get too overly worked.
Yeah.
And
you can see it.
That's definitely, you can see a lot of people get burned out, and you're just like.
One thing that I have noticed is I never thought I'd be in a position where I had to be very cognizant about what I'm communicating to the rest of the world.
How so?
Because of what I'm doing now, and being kind of a visual person up front, I have to be very responsible about the message that I'm putting off, even when I'm not trying to communicate a message.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. Like, you're not overnight, but you definitely became the face of the African American community when it came to Second Amendment rights, advocacy, and they're traditionally, I mean, you have a plethora of guys like me, balding white Americans who are vocal about their rights and everything. But when it comes from women to African Americans on both sides of the sex, it's just you just being who you are and what you're representing is the target, not just anything you do. I think it's potentially have that taken out of context.
Yeah, I mean, there's the African American component. There's also the age component, and then there's also just the lifestyle component.
Yeah,
and then they all come together, and then you can see that in just the people that follow me, and it's a myriad of different dynamics going on.
Agreed.
One thing especially is the idea that somebody like me who lives the way that I live, I live on Main Street, like in the heart of downtown. Can't get more concrete jungle than that.
Yeah,
but yet I still have guns like as if I live theoretically or stereotypically in the country.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a part of my lifestyle, and it doesn't dictate who I am. Just because I have this, it doesn't mean that I think this certain kind of way, or I can only be this type of person. And so what comes with that as well, though, is I almost have to be an example only because I'm public. I think people do this on a daily basis, but I think people use me to see, is it really okay for people who live like this to own these type of guns, to do these things in this way and responsibly? And I have to kind of be that example, whether I want to or not. It's kind of the age old Charles Barkley thing. Are you a role model? I don't even remember what he said. I just remember it was controversial. I think he said.
I don't remember that. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, though. It's the kind of dynamic that it presents is, if you were an old black man who was like, hey, you know, I like guns, it might not be as poignant as if you're like, no, hey, I'm young, I'm hip, and that arguably not one of those things by itself is that much of a, for lack of a better term, let's just say grand slam.
Yeah.
But all those components together has the potential to change a very, very prominent stereotype. Where, you know, you get into these stereotypes of like, oh, well, African Americans vote Democratic, or they're anti-gun, or they're very religious, or whatever. I mean, stereotypes in general, like there's something to them, but they're very hard to break for a lot of different ones that exist. And for you're kind of in that other direction, and people see that, and that's why you have that big target on your back.
Yeah,
because to a gun regulation group, advocacy group, or something like that, you'd be a massive threat because you present something that's completely against the status quo for them. Where they're like, oh no, the African American community supports us. They don't like,
they own it.
Yeah, because white people did that for a long time. They use their firearms to oppress you and everything. So.
And which it begs the question for me sometimes, and it's a controversial statement to make, but it's like if
you had guns at that time,
like it's kind of the idea. It's like, wait, so let me get this straight. I'm supposed to follow you because the white people who had guns before you were using it to oppress me.
Yeah.
So you want me to not have guns and continue to not have guns because of what they did with the guns? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I think it's an insult to our intelligence from that perspective.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ignorance that follows along with that. Some people just don't know. And unfortunately, I feel like I represent a lot of guys, and I'm focusing on a very minute aspect of whatever my draw, my appeal is. But as being a young black guy, there are shit tons of guys like me.
Yeah.
Out there. They are. They're just not as vocal as I am, but they're out there, and for a long time they've just kind of kept to themselves because of that stereotype of I'm just gonna keep this to myself because the moment I show myself as the young black guy with the gun, I'm automatically gonna be deemed a thug, and a part of that, unfortunately, is due to some of the things that we glorify in our community. When we talk about, it's like, I love music. I love it. I love music and I love movies. I love all of those things, all sorts of entertainment. Unfortunately, though, it's gone above and beyond just sheer entertainment sometimes in our community. It's almost been a glorification of some of the lifestyles that's being represented and say some of the music and things like that. Yeah. So it further fosters the idea that all young black guys are this way.
But I feel like the music industry has the potential to change perception. Even if they are glorifying certain things to an extent, because let's be honest, like maybe firearms are being glorified, but maybe that the hip hop community and that type of glorification can change things, like they changed society's perception on big asses.
Yeah.
Right? Am I right? Am I right? You didn't think I was going to go there.
I didn't. I really didn't think you were going to go there. You kind of threw me.
You look at the hip hop influence on asses over the years.
When you have a black man in a chair, and you say black ass and you say asses, it's going to perk me up a little bit. Okay, so you got to be careful when you do that and use that very responsibly.
It's
right?
so funny, but you can't deny it. You can't deny it. Women doing lunges these days.
There has been
20 years ago.
There has been a complete transformation from almost apathetic ass view on asses.
Yeah,
and it's gone from It's gone now to the point where they're injecting themselves and getting bigger asses. Am I complaining? Hell no. However,
okay. We can stop talking about No, we're not. This is podcast material too.
But it's something that sometimes you almost have to go below the surface to realize. Like, so when somebody sees, like for me, like what I do is kind of very blatant. It's almost literal, I stand up and I talk about the political components about guns.
Yeah.
Somebody like you with the channel that you have, they may be surprised to know how passionate you are about actually defending the right.
Sure.
It may be kind of catch them off guard. Like I didn't know he was really kind of into the political stuff, because people try to separate it. People try to act like, and I had a conversation today with a friend of mine, and he was like, man, you know what? He's like, I love your stuff, man. And he's like, but sometimes I kind of cringe when you start talking about the political stuff. And I was like, well, I get it. No, I don't, but I get it. But at the same time, you have to understand. And I told him this. I'm like, well, it's because you have people who are adamant and vehement about protecting this right that you can enjoy enjoy guns the way that you enjoy them, without having to think about the political component. But the problem with that mentality is it's still putting the burden on somebody else. It's passing the buck.
Yeah.
It's saying, you know what? They got these people over here that are doing it. So I'm gonna sit here. I'm just gonna play with my guns and I'm gonna have fun.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm the biggest advocate of that. However, at the end of the day, there's a very, 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 very serious underlying tone when it comes to firearms that is entrenched in politics, whether we want it to be or not. It is. And that's because there are people out there who, whether it be maliciously or just out of ignorance, don't want the right to continue the way it does. When you have people, and there's this idea that no one's trying to get rid of the Second Amendment, no one's trying to do this, but yet to the contrary, you have people like Bill Maher who say, the issue is the Second Amendment. We have to start with the Second Amendment. We need to repeal it. Things like that. When you have people talking like that concept, that ideal isn't far off, and it's not that far gone. So with someone like you and people realizing how passionate you are, I think it's a definite positive, especially for people who are just used to just consuming your content and moving on.
Yeah.
Knowing that, wait, hold on, he's serious. Like, this is not just all fun and games. This is something that I take up the responsibility for. And I think that needs to be, and I'm not going to make the massive assumption that a lot of the other people who are doing what they do with guns on the internet and so forth and so on aren't the same way that you and I are. But I think it does us an incredible service for what we're trying to do as far as maintaining this right.
Yeah.
To have people like you who on the surface may seem like I'm not necessarily full blown into it, but then to realize like, oh no, he is.
Yeah.
And it takes people back, and it causes them to reevaluate themselves.
It's a constant struggle, and trying to balance that entertainment and news side of stuff, because we had this conversation earlier where we were talking about how news itself has become a source of entertainment, and certain shows can hide behind the comedy aspect of their show and say, hey, we're not a legit news organization. We're just poking fun. When the reality is
they
that
know everybody's consuming it as if it's real news.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have news organizations which try to sensationalize to the point of becoming entertainment to get people to come back. And so for me, I try to make sure I define that as much as possible, that, hey, look, this is me. This is the entertainment side of what I do. This is purely exhibition. And so I try to keep a lot of the political stuff outside of every single video, because at some point you burn viewers and stuff like that, because I rely heavily on SEO. And as soon as you get in that political conversation, you start drawing lines in the sand. And that's not to say that I won't have the conversation, which I do in the comments, and I do with people on blogs and people who respond to me via Twitter, and even video responses and stuff like that. All day long, I'll definitely take up that conversation, but there's different times and places for it. I'm not gonna pick that battle every single week, and use that as my primary source of entertainment for people.
Yeah.
But I mean, if anything, I mean, I deal with it more than most people do, just with the regulations and stuff. And a good example is not just the firearm side, but the explosive side of stuff. And you know, I originally went the criminal justice route way back in the day, and never went as far as actually going to law school and taking the bar and everything. Well, yeah, well, one could argue, but the thing is, the law fascinates me, and if I hadn't been fascinated about this whole process and everything, arguably there's no way I could have done it, because I would have gone broke by now.
Yeah.
And you know, I try to mentor other creators out there, large or small, and you know, give them advice here and there. As you know, like, I don't want to come across as arrogant or anything, but you know, I try to point things out to people, and I'll do some more stuff here, as far as like legal education and stuff like that. And a really good example is binary explosives and or reactive targets. And tannerite, as it's primarily known, or the patent written for ammonium nitrate and the aluminum powder, they're both two non-explosive components, right? You take ammonium nitrate, you take aluminum powder. It's 50 state legal. You can get it anywhere. And when you mix the two, it becomes reactive.
Yeah.
And so it takes a specific velocity of detonation for it. And that act itself is interpreted in so many different ways. And so what I try to tell these guys who are creators, as far as the firearms industry, and this kind of goes back to me saying that I'm just terrified of more of the being prosecuted than I am of a criminal for the most part, because it's what I do for a living. And so I look at kind of legal licenses and permits and stuff like that, be it federal and state, kind of like Pokemon. I just want them all, right? Because I don't know how somebody's going to enforce this thing and think that I need this. And you know, I was talking with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosives, and my agent or investigator was telling me, he's like, hey, you only need a permitted user for explosives for your stuff. And it's like, well, yes and no, because the way I also want to manufacture, I want to use binary explosives. And he's like, well, binary explosives aren't regulated by us. It's like, well, they're two non-explosives. And he's like, all right, well, we'll look into it and everything. He's like, just go ahead and apply for your manufacturing license, and don't worry about it. It's the same price. It's just a different check on the box. So honestly, I don't know why anybody would get permitted user, but whatever. Maybe inspection or something like that. As far as their facility is concerned, they might not be able to get it zoned appropriately for manufacturing. And so I did it, and then lo and behold, a year and a half later, I started talking to different federal agencies that were kind of cracking down and regulating this stuff. And they're like, well, yeah, the way we interpret the law is...
you know it's going to be bad when they start off by saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they're like, well, look, it is 50 state legal. You can buy it for personal use. So if you go out and you shoot a reactive target, and you shoot it out at the range by yourself, you just shot it for personal use, no entertainment value or anything like that. You, sir, are an entertainer. And if you monetize on that video, you technically profited from taking two non-explosive components, manufacturing an explosive, and shooting it for profit on camera. And then one could argue, okay, I'm not going to put ads on that video. Well, even the way the law is written is directly or indirectly profit. So you don't have to directly profit from an ad sale, but if you put it on your Facebook and you're an entertainer and you shoot a binary explosive, you indirectly promoted your business, which you make profit off of, which helped generate ad revenue.
You can make those connections down to the breath that you take every second.
So it's one of those things where I try to help as many other channels and creators or whoever out as possible, but I'm like, look, this isn't a game. I mean, you see me do something fun on camera, that's great, but it comes with an asterisk. You know, like if you see me blow up, even it doesn't have to be a car. I could blow up a coffee can, and because it was outside of the manufacturer's recommendations of having in a plastic container that they supplied with the binary explosive, by putting it in a coffee can, it presented metal fragmentation, which made this a destructive device, which is felony possession. If you get caught with felony manufacturing, and they can get you so many different things, and that will take away your right to bear arms. And then there's like
just like that.
The consequences for the actions are like, that's why I say I'm in constant fear that I'm not complying at some capacity. And I know that ignorance is not a defense, but hopefully if that day ever comes where they say, hey, you're not compliant, we're going to fine you, be like, guys, look, if anybody has ever gone above and beyond, I get ink rolled and live scanned like 18 times a year for my licenses and permits. I mean, if you guys really had your shit together, I'd only have to do it one time.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with it. I'll give you your $150 every single time that I do it because I need this to
run the business.
Yeah, for business. But so it is frustrating. I mean, a lot of people say, well, you should move out of California again. I'm not going to take that defeatist attitude. I mean, I do live in Tennessee, but I like to work in California because it's just a great place to be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I mean it's definitely one of those things where there's so much that goes into it that you don't realize, and then the level of risk that you're actually taking, because I mean they know you. If they want to, they can come after you. They can come and make your life a living hell if they want to.
Yeah.
I mean the same thing with me. You know, if they want to, they can try to make an example out of me by just making it's so easy to make a mistake.
Yeah.
It's incredibly easy.
Yeah.
There have been times where I've been in a car with somebody and we drove in.
Don't say it. Don't you say it.
I'm just saying. Hypothetically, I was in the car.
Allegedly.
Hypothetically, because allegedly you could maybe inevitably prove. Hypothetically, you can't prove shit.
Let's just say if you were in a car with
somebody and it just so happens that you cross a certain border with a certain particular item, it's illegal versus not being illegal in the other place. Like that. It's that easy.
Yeah.
When you take a look at some of the cases that happen, like I forgot her name. God forbid. I mean, I did a video on her, but the lady from New Jersey.
Oh yeah.
You know, made an honest mistake and then tried to own up to the mistake and say and be forthright.
Oh, and
then they went ahead, and tried to make an example out of her.
Yeah.
Those aren't the people we're looking to go after. Like that, we're missing the point here. A lot of it has to do because we've politicized something that's not supposed to be politicized.
Yeah.
So now people are trying to make examples to push an agenda or to make a point when the whole I have way more appreciation for somebody that says, you know what, I want to save lives. So this is how I'm going to try to do it. You may be completely and utterly wrong, but when it boils down to I just want to make a point, I can't respect you. I can't. I just can't. And so it's those things that like people don't realize how much like you're on the front line. Ironically enough,
man, you don't know the half of it.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, it's another thing. Like the firearms is one thing, but it's such an intricate web of I mean, when people say like you should just like leave the state and not do business there, it's like it does like, I mean, between state taxes and everything. Like here's another example. As far as the web goes, I don't personally smoke marijuana, right? And
neither do
I never have because
I can't say that
since well I've been dealing with the federal government my entire life.
Gotcha.
And so I have friends that have, and I have friends in the state of California who have medicinal marijuana licenses and stuff like that, which the state says that they may partake in that or possess it and use it. And I can't allow them to come over to my house. And they're like, well, why can't I come over? It's like, well, I'll come over maybe to your place. I can't be there whenever you're smoking or anything like that, because federally speaking, the federal government does not recognize the state's ability to permit people to do that. If I were to have, let's say, a random inspection and I had an agent knock on my door and say, hey, we want to check out your safes and see what you are storing right now, I'd have to comply, let them in, check things out and everything. And if you were in here and you had that on you, that is a felony. That's not a misdemeanor. This is a federal crime, and the federal government doesn't care what the state says.
Don't give a damn.
And so it's this intricate web of regulation that I have to always err on the side of caution and just go above and beyond and go the Pokemon approach.
That's interesting. And it's funny that you say that, because I've talked to like close friends of mine who don't understand why I'm so anal. How I'm very adamant about certain things, and I'm just like I have to be in control of everything that's around me. Because if I'm not,
alcohol same way.
Stuff like that can happen.
We go somewhere, people want to have a drink. Well, no, I'm driving, and they're like, well, we'll just have one drink. Okay, well, I'll just take an Uber home or something like that, and I just have to do it
because because somebody getting caught drunk driving who doesn't carry a gun.
Yeah,
it's not just a DUI, but I mean you're drunk driving. Me with a gun in the car.
Oh, it's
because I always have one. Not only is it's a headline, and it turns into a massive felony.
Yeah.
On top of that.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then there's the headline.
Yeah.
That therein tells the other additional responsibility I have, because at that point I'm supposed to be a model citizen. I've touted myself as being a responsible gun owner. I'm the guy who's speaking for all the people and saying we are responsible gun owners. Why are you coming after us with these laws? But then if somebody's able to write a headline that says Colion Noir found with guns and weed and alcohol and caught drunk driving and doing all of these things, it's kind of like it's a high standard to live up to.
Yeah.
But like my mother always says, you made your bed, now lie in it.
Right. Now, so that comes full circle, right? So this is all of the frustrations and everything that we have, be it with the regulations on a state and federal level and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily live in fear. I do this because I enjoy it. And though I do have all these frustrations, the reason why I fight is because I believe in the right.
Man, I've really enjoyed this. Like I said, I've always wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't always get the opportunity, how time permits or whatever. But I mean, if I can, we'll make this more regular.
Absolutely.
Happen on a more regular basis. But
if anything, it's great mental exercise because like you just being able to get your thoughts out there in our busy lives and stuff like that, it definitely helps.
But most importantly, being able to talk with people who aren't afraid to offend.
Yeah,
that's me.
I'll argue with you all day long.
Yeah, and then walk out of here and be totally fine. That to me is the mental exercise that you just alluded to that I think needs to happen on a more consistent basis.
Yeah.
And I will continue to try to do that, and I will seek that out and search that out as much as possible. I don't like being wrong. I'll be the first to admit it, but then I'll also be the first to admit when I'm wrong.
I don't care. Honestly, I hate being passionately wrong. I hate when I'm passionate about something and I'm wrong, but I don't care. I guess when I was in my early 20s, I like to spew opinions at people and be right and flash my
intellectual wit.
I would like to think that it was intelligence, but I'd say it was more arrogance than anything. And as you get older, you start realizing, okay, let's just have a conversation. Let's see what we can do to actually further a conversation and actually get something done versus just spew back and forth.
That actually throws off a lot of people that meet me.
What's that?
They when they see my videos, they encounter my videos, and they confuse my passion for absolutism.
Yeah.
And when they meet me and have a conversation about
all for gun regulation, destroying all the guns and banning everything, but you got to prove it. You got to make me understand why it's necessary.
And it's interesting. Like I never looked at it from that perspective. I was always the devil's advocate route, and that was my medium for disarming. It was like we're having a conversation. Once I start going into an argument, I'm like, all right, fine, let's back off for a second. I'm just gonna play devil's advocate from your position, and then I'll present them with an alternative explanation or alternative position, and then let them do with that as they will, because once the egos get involved in the conversation, it goes nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, I love saying whatever it is that somebody wants me to say. Start it off that way, because that really helps me come from a place of listening and giving them their due, and not just saying, hey, change my mind. It's like, no, I want to ban all guns. I want to destroy all of them. Show me why we should and how we can do it.
I love that approach.
And if you,
I'm going to incorporate that in the way I engage and talk to other people as well, because I think that.
And I believe a certain way right now, and if you can convince me to get to that point, I'm all for it. I'm all for just about anything crazy that you could think of in the world, but you just have to convince me why I should really believe that way.
That would naturally assume that existed.
Yeah, I think so it would have to be something like, okay, humanity is done on Earth. We have this one ship that's going to through space however long it can live. We need to ban guns because it's just not necessary. The consequences for being able to have that on the spacecraft, and this one person wigs out and just destroys humanity, then it becomes to the point where, yeah, okay, I get it. I could potentially see that, but it's like, it's for me, it always boils down to certain things like, again, personal protection in the home, outside the home, or whatever. And some people will really disagree with me on this, especially those who believe in civilians should have every right that the government has. Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know about that. I mean, that's a conversation I'd like to have, but I don't have a firm opinion on it because I have these generalizations and ideas in my head that I haven't really developed a concrete opinion on. But I do believe that it's not in humanity's best interest for people to carry around nuclear weapons on their person and be a religious ideologue.
I mean, I've done a video on it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the cost benefit ratio. The cost benefit ratio makes no sense.
Yeah,
it's self-destructive.
It's completely
so it defeats the purpose for why I'm carrying it in the first place, which is why I don't want to carry around in a suitcase.
Yeah.
But I also think that a lot of the reason why you have so much faith in presenting an argument that way is because there is no logical way to explain away natural rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
The idea of protecting yourself as a natural right.
Well, that's why I say you can't. Nobody's been able to get me past that point of personal protection.
You can't.
I mean, granted, I prefer hunting and everything versus farm raised and everything. It's just especially now, it's kind of like becoming that kind of trendy thing, which is kind of ironic
because it was the way it started.
Yeah, but now with like factories and stuff like that, and all these documentaries on human rights or animal rights advocacy and stuff like that, it's like people are leaning more towards hunting, which could ultimately drive up the prices of tags and make hunting more expensive and not economically feasible for people to put meat on the table. But anyways, I just like having.
So it's a give and a take, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, at some point, like you look at things like freedom of speech and stuff like that. I mean, freedom of speech is an inherent human civil right. Like being able to speak your mind. But you look at the internet and everybody flooding false information, and it makes it so much more difficult to actually find what the truth is.
Real information.
Yeah.
But then again, you have to deal with the alternative, which is there's no access to the real information.
Then that gets into a capitalism situation, or it's like, okay, well, why not let that happen, and then ultimately people will be so frustrated with false information that they find a way to weed that stuff out, and they do it on their own. And
that's why people always ask me why I don't just jump on subjects the moment they come out. Like something will happen, and they're like, "Why haven't you said anything about it?"
It's because I haven't formed an opinion
on it yet.
I haven't formed an educated
opinion. And that's the thing. And that's the one thing I will not do is I've learned my lessons in life.
Don't be passionately ignorant.
Exactly.
Don't be passionately ignorant. That's a great way to end this. My apologies, guys, if there was a little bit of audio issues and stuff. We're trying to film some of the noir season here while we do the podcast and everything. So my apologies if the audio went up or down. I got the dogs running around in here. So here's a little bit of, all right, buddy. He's telling me it's time to eat. So, my apologies if any of the audio or anything in this was a little bit up or down. And next time it'll be a little bit different. We'll lock down the set a little bit more, and we'll make sure all the audio and everything's monitored all the way through. And let's go ahead and wrap this up. Again, special thanks to the sponsors of this episode, leadfarmerclothing.com. Pick up a limited run FullMag operator hat and use the coupon code PODCAST at checkout for 10% off. Along with Black Rifle Coffee at blackriflecoffee.com. Go there and check out all the new flavors of roast there and pick up some of the new K-Cups. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for all your support and everything I do. Don't forget to get your pet spayed or neutered so I don't have to rescue any more animals anytime soon. And I'll see y'all next time.